Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me today, I have three phenomenal guests in store for you. They, for a living, come alongside and encourage and uplift people. So I thought, what better opportunity would it be to bring them all together to, kind of go in a little bit in reverse and share a little bit about what their journey has been like and how they've navigated some challenging times along the way. So again, they've taken time out of their busy schedules to do so, and I surely appreciate that. So without any further delay, allow me to introduce to you Miss Marcella Gore, Mr. Oris Spoon Johnson, and Mr. Danny Ross. Welcome, the three of you, to the show. I appreciate you being here. How are
Thank
you
you.
doing?
Doing well.
All
Doing
right.
great.
All right. Everybody's
Doing
good.
good, thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, thank you for being a part of this. I truly do appreciate it. And I believe that you're going to have some things to share that are going to be a blessing to somebody that's going to have an opportunity to listen to this episode. So thank you again. Before we jump in to our segments for the show, I would like to give each of you an opportunity to just share with the audience just a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do, that kind of thing. So I'll start off with you, Marcella. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am Marcella Gore. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in the state of South Carolina, which is where I reside, the Charleston area. I'm originally from North Carolina. I'm married. I have three beautiful kids, and I have a private practice called Mind Your Mind Counseling and Consulting.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. All right. I'm going to jump to you, Mr. Oris Johnson. I know him as Spoon, but Mr. Oris Johnson, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh yes, I'm. You already said my name, but I am a father. I'm a husband, and I work right now currently with a group called Onward Solutions, and I am a pastoral Christian counselor slash mental health life coach, walking people through the various vicissitudes of life, and I love it. And Uh, what I love to get to do is be a husband and a father, and I'm also a new 5 year and 2 year old grandfather. So to my grandson and granddaughter, and so man, I just love walking people through life and just developing those relationships. So that's a little bit about me, man, and I'm just looking forward to keep it going somehow.
All right. All right. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. And of course, aside from his professional practice in that regard, he is also my professional barber. So,
Oh yeah,
so
that's
he,
right.
he he cuts me up every week. Keep me right. So I could be ready for stuff like this. So I don't have me out here looking crazy. So appreciate that as well. All
Yes,
right.
sir.
And Danny, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, I'm Danny Ross. I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor. I'm here in the Metroplex. My office is in South Lake, Texas. I
Wow.
do it in office, and I also do online therapy. My primary focus is working with males, particularly Black males. I work in trauma, grief, and loss. I've written about 6 books. Most of them are workbooks, but I really wanted to create some resources that people who may not be ready to go into the therapeutic process, a way to start finding out a little bit about themselves. And I do a show called The Messages That We Carry. And most of everything that I do is connected to our messaging because oftentimes we've received messages from people who may not have given us a clear idea of what or who we need to become. And sometimes they project things onto us that they're
Mm.
not necessarily helpful to us. And I like to think that I help them release themselves to be their authentic selves. And I just absolutely love the work that I do. But thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome.
And again, it's a pleasure having, three African American, mental health slash, all the various modes of counseling that you do. And just I want to, give a little nod to Danny in the sense that he got me over the hump in terms of accepting being comfortable with counseling. So he is my personal counselor.
Thank
That
Awesome.
and so
Awesome.
because I was one of those people who all counseling's for crazy people, and so, but I tell you, and I'm transparent in this amongst you as well as those who are listening that it is a very real thing and a necessary thing, and it doesn't mean that you're crazy to explore that. In fact, it should be just a normal recipe of what you do to just stay right in your mind and emotionally and everything else. So just to be able to have somebody that you can confide in and trust in, and and process stuff, that in a no judgment zone type of environment. So I definitely appreciate you getting me over that hump. In
Definitely.
in the chance meeting that we had and made that connection, and we've been connected ever since. So thank you for that.
Thank
So,
you.
as we navigate our way through the podcast session today, as with any journey that you have, you can't talk about your life journeys and all the challenges and the ups and downs that come along with it without discussing, the origins of it all. And the best way to do that is to start with the beginnings, in terms of what was it like for you growing up. So that's my question to each of you. Give us if you would, please share with us, a little bit about what was life like for you growing up. Not only fond memories that you have of that time, but then also if there was any particular challenges that stick out to you that you'd like to share, and about how you had to overcome and navigate that, please do so as well. So I'll start off with you, Marcella. Tell us a little bit about what was it like growing up for you.
Yeah, so I grew up in a really small town in North Carolina. Um, and I am the third oldest of six kids, four brothers, and I have a sister. And for the most part, I was raised by my mother and my grandmother. My father was there sometimes, but he wasn't always there. And when he was there, excuse me, um, he had his own challenges. So he was there sometimes physically, but not really there emotionally and mentally. So for the most part, my grandmother and my mother were my role models. They were who kind of poured into me growing up. I'm a country girl, grew up around dirt roads, a lot of farmers. We had chickens and pigs and all of the farm animals. So I'm an outside girl. I grew up, running outside, being outside, drinking water out of the water hose, that kind of thing, right? And so my fondest memories during childhood is spending time with my family, my extended maternal family. We tended to fellowship over food. And so we would have Sunday dinners. My grandmother was a chef and she enjoyed cooking. She was known for her fried chicken. And so some of my fondest memories was just being around a table, eating some good soul food with my family, playing outside with my cousins, and all of that good stuff. I would say some of the challenges that I faced growing up were definitely more environmental. Being from a small town, it was a predominantly white town, a lot of racial disparities. Um, and so it wasn't a lot of opportunities for youth, especially being young, black, on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale. It just wasn't a lot of opportunities. I didn't see a lot of people, a lot of black people in positions as society would paint as, wealthy or, higher economically class positions like attorneys and doctors. All I seen was what I saw on TV. And the Cosby Show was like the show, right? It was like, oh, Bill's a doctor and Claire's an attorney. Like, wouldn't that be nice? But I never seen it in real life. And I think just because representation is such a important thing when growing up as a child, seeing people that look like you in certain positions, I didn't have that. And even in the school system, probably 5% of the teachers from grade school, kindergarten, all the way up to high school, probably about 5% were African American. So even in that space, it wasn't a lot of us. And so for me, trying to dream big was a little hard because I kind of felt like I was in a little box and it was the only exposure that I had at the time. And so as a little girl, I would say that just really dreaming big and really believing in those dreams was hard. It was a challenge. And it was something that I didn't really start to do until I went to college and I was exposed more. So it took me being, leaving that environment and going into different environments. And God kind of elevated me into all of these different opportunities. where I was able to see more people that looked like me in certain positions. But it's almost like with Obama, right? Before President Barack Obama became president, it was like people would say, "Oh, you could be the first Black president," but as a little kid, never seeing it, it could be really hard to really believe. But once he stepped into that office, for a lot of Black children, it was like, "Oh, okay, I can do this because he did it," right? And so for me, I think just growing up and not having that representation was a challenge for me.
All
Um,
right.
but as I got older and more life experiences, my mindset began to shift.
Awesome, awesome. I appreciate you sharing that with us a little bit about your childhood. And just a quick follow up. How much of that experience in childhood would you say played a role in you going into the field of work that you're in now?
Well, so childhood, because of what I went through, I actually and I thought my plan was going to be criminal justice because I wanted to do criminal justice reform. I had just been exposed to a lot of criminal injustices towards my community and family members. And so that was what I got my undergraduate degree in. However, because of something tragic that happened when I was in college, everything kind of shifted and I ended up in mental health. So I can't say that what I went through as a child really impacted where I am now. Mental health was something that I didn't learn about until later in life. And then I became passionate. I fell in love with it and became passionate about it.
I totally understand. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Awesome, awesome. All right, Spoon. Same question for you. Tell us what it was like for you growing up, and any fond memories, challenges that you may have experienced that you'd like to share.
Well, so I grew up. I'm the oldest of four, and so my dad, he was the oldest of 10, and then my mom, she was the baby of four, and so uh, but being born into my dad and my mom, there was already a dynamic that was already going on. And then we all grew up in church. So I'm a PK kid. My grandparents both on both sides were pastors. And so I was born and raised in a small town called Fresno, California. And so when people say California, they think, everything is Hollywood, LA area, but that's not the case. Fresno is an agricultural place, so it's country. So my mom, her mom is one of, I think, 14 or 12. And then on my dad's side, his mom, I think it was another like 14. And they all, without knowing each other, moved to Fresno, California. And so I grew up in a large family. And so my dad he was one of the first black dispatchers for Santa Fe Railroad. And so he worked that, and he also felt a call to ministry, but it was through Christian education. And so he opened up the Christian school, or continued the Christian school in another direction, at my grandfather's church, which was his father-in-law, which was my mom's father. And so from there, he started evangelizing. So one of the fond memories I have is my dad was, he also, we come from a background on my grandfather's side, which is my dad's father. He was in concrete construction, and he had 6 boys. And so naturally, that's what you were going to do. You was going to learn to pour some concrete. And so every spring, getting ready to go in the summer, once I turned 13, I was every weekend after school on the weekends, I was working with my dad. And so we would save up our money, and because he was, working, and he was making a decent income for us to take care of us, once he started evangelizing, he would actually take us on the road across the country, and he would go as far as to Florida, and we would all pack up and go, and he would preach his way back to California. So he always wanted us to have an experience in different states and different worlds in terms of how people live, and where they lived. And so most of those areas, so it's kind of surprising. Most of those churches were the white Caucasian churches. So, but they, believed the same way and all that stuff. So that was one of the fond memories, is that every summer, for the whole summer, we would go to places like Brunswick, New Jersey, Brunswick, Georgia. We would go to Pensacola, Florida, Arkansas, Oklahoma. And so we would come back. And so some of the not so, cool moments was, there was an expectation being a PK kid. And so the one thing I didn't like, and I believe Danny said it earlier in his introduction, was the things that was projected or put onto us. And so that was one expectation that I was like, and I come from one of them Pentecostal holy roller type churches where, you're going to get the prophetic going. And I'm grateful for my background, but I was always told, you're going to be a pastor. You're going to be, and I was seeing the things that my grandfathers were going through and my dad. And I was like, Lord, please, no, I'll stay on the drums. Let me play the drums. I didn't want that because I saw the life that came with it. And so, as I got older, I just started, trying to stay in the music field and not trying to, really, step into that pastoral role and things of that nature of the way it was projected onto me. And so, yeah, but I think that was some of the tough things, because I couldn't do what all my other friends were doing. I grew up in that age where uh, the you know the Bloods and the Cubs and all that stuff started happening, and my dad, and he just wanted to protect me, and so it was a lot that he just church, 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 go here, go there, and so my friends, I just felt really like I didn't get to have many friends growing up. I did have some in the church, but outside of that, and so growing up, I recognized that I kind of felt like I missed out on stuff, and so that was some of the things that really started being a challenge for me a little bit. So, but I am grateful for the foundation that I got. My dad taught us in those environments, as my sister here was speaking about, was that no matter what, you stand tall with your head up. And even though they may be a different race, you have a right to be who you are. Be proud of who you are. And I'm really grateful for my dad in that aspect, that he, in spite of, any other challenges we had, he really taught all four of us, hey, because God and because you're here, you have a right to stand in who you are. And so he never backed off of telling me and pouring into me who I was. And so that kind of was a really, different dynamic, because hearing what God is saying about you and then trying to figure out who you are in spite of, and then as you get older, you kind of work that out. But yeah, so that's my story of, good fond memories and not so fun things, was just the projection of what you should be was a tough thing. So
All right. Again, I appreciate your transparency and sharing that. That's very powerful and very very relatable, because I think many of us have gone through that in our own respective ways of what you're going
mhm.
to be, and that not necessarily aligning with what we had in mind about what we think we'd like to be. It was protective, and
Yeah,
it was coming from a good place, but not
absolutely.
necessarily best for you always. So
Yeah.
again, appreciate you sharing that. So we'll switch it over to you, Danny. Tell us, what was it like for you growing up?
Okay. I'm from Columbus, Mississippi. It's like northeast Mississippi, very
Mhm.
close to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, about
Mm.
maybe 2.5 hours south of like Memphis. But I grew up in a large, large family in a single wide trailer. So when you guys were talking about your upbringing, I so connected. And I think Spoon just mentioned that he grew up a PK kid. I grew up a PK
Mhm.
kid as well.
Right.
My dad died very early on. I
Mhm.
was about to turn 5 when he passed. I always go back to this story that I saw everyone crying. I saw everybody feeling sad. And internally, I knew what was going on, but nobody talked to me and told me that he had died. And to this day, I think that is such a pivotal point in all my actions, feeling worthy enough to be told that your dad has died. And so I think even, like I say, even to this day, I deal with that because sometimes you don't feel as though people see you fully as being capable, confident. And so when it starts with your family not being open and honest with you, it makes you feel some kind of way. It makes you second guess yourself. I remember also just not really having a voice and not being able to say how you felt about anything because you just do it because that's what I asked you to do. And we all lived in this neighborhood where everybody was around the corner and everybody knew your business. So you could not do anything. And as we've been talking about, a lot of times, you know, you had no choice as to what you were going to become or who you were going to become because, for one, it was just a limited vision in my family and in my town. And so one of the things that it took me, music was one of the gateways to getting me in a lot of doors. I mean, a lot of doors. And so we had a family group, and I remember auditioning for Stillman College Choir. First time they rejected me, and I said to myself, wow, I really wanted to be in that choir because I thought they were phenomenal. So I chose to go to a small 2-year community college. It's in Fulton, Mississippi, called Itawamba Community College. And I studied music, and I said, after I transfer, I'm going to make sure that I get in. So at that time, I had not been exposed to classical music, and that's where you're going to get your money if you want to be, in a professional music, choir or accepted in music. And so I learned the repertoire, some Italian, some German, and old just English folk songs and things of that nature. And so I went back to audition back at Stillman. And I had to audition on a stage because they were between performances. And at the end of my audition, the professor was like, okay, now why you didn't do that before now? I wanted to say, I didn't know. Nobody had prepared me for what it was like because they didn't know. And I went in there and I remember the song, Jesus, You're the Center of My Joy. I sang it well. But that does not show your skill or your ability. So the second time I got in and I got the full scholarship, meals, board, tuition, everything was paid. And I think that was a lesson for me as to where change could happen if you work hard enough. I do recall also we went on tour. That is the first time I had been exposed to going anywhere outside of the state of Mississippi. We went to some small places, but going on tour, coming to Texas, seeing how other people live in really, really nice homes and things of that nature. And so when I got the opportunity to just see how other people live and there were other spaces and going to New York, man, I said, I wanted to do this. So eventually we get to Florida A&M. I think that's the place to where I realized there's a name for it. Like when I went to school and counseling and I'm like, oh, that's what I've been dealing with. So I would say that I was depressed or anxious my entire youth, but I didn't have a language to articulate that. And so one of the most recent experiences, I want to move a little further. I know we got to keep going, but I do want to recall one of the difficult experiences as what you guys are saying. I think it shaped me into the person that I'm becoming, who I am. My sister died about 2 years ago, and everything resurfaced from my dad and not being told that he had passed away. And I have been toying and playing with the idea of being a grief therapist and also just kind of focusing on that. And I have been writing a book, and I hate to say it, but it took my sister's death to finish the grief book, and it's called Buried Messages. And one
Mm,
of the things about Buried Messages is the what if. What did I not get a chance to say?
mm,
What's the unclosed messages that I'm dealing with
mm,
right now? Will I ever get over this? But nobody talks about those things when you're going through grief and loss, because we
mhm,
try to shove something down people's throat and say, well, it's going to be all right. Well, no, it ain't. If I feel how I feel right now, give me my moment, give me my time, give me the space that I need so I can heal how I need to heal. So, one of the things I'm trying to do right now, man, is just encourage the people, let them know the best thing you can do with people is sit with them,
mhm,
give them some space, give them some time. You know, people like, what you need. You don't know what you need when you're going through a period or an episode like that. So, take care of the kids, take them off somebody's hand for a second, do some different things, but we know how to be cordial and we know how to be nice. And one of the things it seems as though we just lose our minds when somebody passes away. So I want to really just kind of spread a message in my community primarily because I
mhm,
know the resources have not been there to talk about grief, loss, and it's okay to feel how you feel. And we've been taught, well, you got to get over it. My other belief is, why not teach us how to reconnect? Our deceased loved ones, they've left us with so many inspirational things, so
mhm,
much life. We
mhm.
have to learn a way to reconnect. So that's part of my journey, part of my story is I'm just passionate about helping our culture through a lot of the emotional turmoil that we've been given. So thank you for this opportunity.
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely, and thank you as well for sharing your transparency and your experiences. I think all of that is valuable. You all came from three different perspectives. Uh, Similar challenges, but again, different perspectives, different points of view. And again, I believe that this is going to be a blessing for someone as they're listening throughout the course of our podcast episode. This is not an accident. This is by design to put the three of you together because God put it on my heart that this is you have something powerful to share, and you're already exceeding expectations with that. So, as we progress along here, I do want to kind of delve a little bit deeper in the sense that again, as part of this life journey that we go on and the challenges that we deal with, there is going to come a moment. You live long enough. There's going to come a moment where something hits a little different. It's this is not the casual or a quick fix type thing. Something that you might not have felt like when it arrived. How am I going to get through this? I don't see a way out. I'm thinking I'll never get past this. So I want to ask each of you to share what that story was like for you and how you managed to navigate through that. So I'll jump back to you, Marcella. Tell us about a time when this was different. This weight was a little bit heavier than the other weights that you had to deal with, and how were you able to navigate through that?
Absolutely. So, in my family, I'm first generation college graduate. Um, and over the years, even early on, I kind of took the role as problem solver, fixer. Like that was kind of my role in my sibling group and in my family in general, right? Which can probably speak to why I am in the profession that I'm in also. But that was kind of my role. And so when I was in college, um, my junior year of college, second semester, I got a phone call that my brother had been shot and killed.
Mm.
My brother is fine. He was 26 years old. I was 20 years old. And in our birth order, he and I was beside each other. So it was my older brother, him, and then myself. He was, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced it, but it's one family member that is the life of every party, that keeps everybody connected somehow. Like you can talk to him and his energy and his smile, just energetic. Like he was that person in our family. So losing him was a big blow to everybody. Myself, my family as a whole, our community. He was just a really big part of everybody's lives. And so, one day he was there and the next day he wasn't.
Mm.
I have never experienced loss like that in my life. My family either. It was very tragic. So here I am in school trying to be the best Marshalla I could be, navigating college, and this happened. And so I'm in school because I wanted to make a change as far as criminal justice go, reform, particularly in our community. And so he passed away. Um, Mental health, grief counseling, none of those things was conversations that were had back then. This happened in 2004. Um, you know, Mental health wasn't even really acknowledged. It was the stigma that's attached to it now, the crazy stigma. It was very strong back then. Like people didn't go to therapy. It wasn't a thing. In fact, on my college campus, like now they have the counseling centers. So if something happens, they can provide support to students. That wasn't available then when I was in school. The counselors focused more on the academic part. And so I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to navigate it. My family didn't know how to navigate it. Watching them hurt made me hurt even more. And so, because I was in a space of a lot of professionals that was in the criminal justice field, excuse me, and because my brother's death, there was a lot of injustices attached to it. My family never got the justice that we were supposed to, that we deserve and need still to this day. Um, and so the criminal justice system failed us. And here I am going to school. So I reached out to my professors who, at the time, I had an advanced law professor. And then I had another professor whose background, he was a retired police chief for a county that was neighbored to our county. And I went to him, and he was an African American male. And I said, I shared to him what happened, which took a lot to even say. And long story short, in a nutshell, he pretty much told me that the system doesn't always, we don't always get treated fairly in the system. And so for me, I was heartbroken because he pretty much told me that what I knew was happening to me directly, right? To my family. And so it was my junior year. It was too late. At that point, I didn't want to go to school. I did not. I had no desire to go to school. I was operating from a space of pain. I was angry. And God placed two people in my life. And those two people I worked with because I was working part time. Those two people, two friends, Lydia and Kim. Lydia had experienced the same thing. She had lost her brother to gun violence. Kim had lost her mom. And so she offered me to come and stay at her house. And she encouraged me to stay in school, continue to go to school. I continued to go to school. I graduated with my degree in criminal justice. Afterwards, though, I was like, what am I going to do with this? Because I had no desire to work in that profession no more. And so just so happened, I moved back to my hometown, and moving back to my hometown, mental health, working with kids that had mental health disorders was a very big thing. And so I got into that field. I started working with children that had behavioral diagnosis or neurodevelopmental diagnoses. And I worked with them in different settings. And that was how I got introduced to mental health. And I began doing it and I fell in love with it. I worked in spaces with psychiatrists and therapists, and I started learning, okay, this is what mental health is. This is what mental wellness consists of. And they always said, you should go to school to be a therapist. People really connect with you. And I was like, maybe one day. Right. And so I continued to work for years, bachelor's level in the criminal justice field, doing like case management stuff and working with families and children. And eventually I pursued my degree, my master's in clinical mental health, and I obtained my licensure. And so that's kind of how mental health became a part of my purpose. I felt like losing my brother was one of the hardest things that I had to deal with, and for about 8 or 9 years after that, I kind of felt like, we see the cartoon where there's like a cloud and rain, and it's just on that one person and they walk in and it follows that person everywhere. I felt like that was the space I was in for about 7 or 8 years. And then I also saw how my family, um, they suffered, a lot of them adopted unhealthy ways of coping.
Mhm.
It was terrible. It was bad. And so I was going through that, and in that season, I think like my mindset was really different. It was more like, I could be here one day and gone the next, so I need to live my life to the fullest every day, right? And I had like this fearlessness
Mhm.
that I was going through, and I got a little reckless, and then and one day God set me down. Literally, He was like, "Okay, enough is enough. I need your attention because I got something for you to do." And so he took me kicking and screaming. I'm not even gonna lie. He took me kicking and screaming. I didn't grow up in the church. I knew who God was, but I didn't know God. And there's
Hmm.
a really big difference. And so
Hmm.
in that season, I got to know God. I learned how to fast. I learned how to pray. I was actually going through a sickness, an autoimmune sickness. And to this day, doctors still don't know what it is or what it was. But I went through it for about a year, and it affected my mobility in both of my legs. And when I said God set me down, I mean like literally I couldn't do much. And so in that season, I got closer to him and I learned who he was, and I turned my life around, and he started restoring me.
Mhm.
And he restored me, and after he restored me, things just started to fall into place. And so that's kind of that's what I went through, and then kind of what how it got me to where I am now.
Mm, mm. Again, that's a powerful story right there, and just another testament about how God moves. He will take one of the most devastating moments of your life, but then if you allow Him, He'll leverage that very thing that was, hurtful beyond measure, and flip it into something to where, in this particular case, you're now operating in your calling. And so you're taking your pain and using that for purpose and changing lives of other people. So, and that's why it's so important for us to not linger so much in letting that pain that we're going through be the ending of our story, when in fact it might just be the very beginning of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it hurts, it doesn't feel good. We have to figure out a way to navigate and process through that, but eventually, if you stay steadfast with that, and of course you incorporate the God component into it, um, what happens from that is just beyond words, and it's one of those things you don't know until you know, until you've been
yeah,
in that
Absolutely.
situation. So thank you for sharing that. That's very
yeah.
powerful. I'm gonna flip it over to you, Spoon. Same question. That one moment in your life, that just it hit different. Man, this was a weight. I wasn't sure I was gonna get through this situation, but I'm here today to talk about it. What was that story like for you?
So mine was like a ripple effect,
Hmm.
and then it had like a crescendo at the end. And it started in 2004 when I lost my grandfather, my mom's dad. Um, um, I I was born. All four of us. I didn't mention. We were all born at home, and my grandmother delivered all of us. And so,
Hmm.
me being the first and the oldest, my grandfather, I was his, first biological grandson, but he didn't. I didn't know nothing about that until I got older, because he treated everybody the same, but I was tied to his hip, and so the Lord took him on in 2004, and it just, man, it's just things just what was different. Um, and so 3 years after that, on the same day, the very same day of this particular thing, that was another ripple effect. But this is the whole year. It was just an eventful year. Marcella and Danny, and I knew nothing about grief. Church was like, hey, just come get prayer. God gonna do it. It's over. So I didn't know anything about talking through this stuff and how it affects you and the waves of the grief
Mhm.
that just hit you. And no, let me back up. Not no waves. There's tsunamis. Okay, it's a tsunami that just hits you and hits you and hits you. And so, literally in 2007, in April, my wife lost her cousin at only 33 years old to cancer. You guys, that same day, that same night, after walking my wife through that and just trying to figure out what do we do, and she's devastated. The whole family's devastated. My brother calls me and said, "Man, I hope you're sitting down. I got to talk to you." And I said, "Nope. You know I don't do that. Don't you tell me nothing bad over the phone. You come see me. Or well, no, I'm sorry. I'll take that back. I like to hear it right away. That's how I am, so I can start processing." Well, unbeknownst to me, that same day, that afternoon, my best friend was killed in a car accident.
Mm.
And I didn't know that. That was the very same day. 2 months later, this is in 2007, I lose my other grandfather, which was my dad's father. And right in this season and time, I was just trying to just grapple through to grab onto anything and I'm grateful to God that he was there. My wife was there, my children. Well, August of that year, we moved to Texas. And so, mind you, it's still a ripple effect. And I didn't know until 5 years ago, 4 years ago, it all was the crescendo that hit me. My wife was diagnosed with kidney disease and she needed a kidney transplant. And so, whew, wow, I didn't know it was going to hit me like that again. But at this point, my rock, my best friend, is like, and this is something Danny, Marcella, and Joseph, uh, I knew about God. I've been raised in it, but I'm like, yo, dude, where the miracle at? You know,
Hmm.
uh, where you at, dude? I need the miracle. You said you do miracles, and I never forget uh, the love of my life. At times at night, she not breathing. I'm like, I don't want her to know I'm scared, but it was a traumatic moment, and it was just like, whoa, what is this? And I never knew grief could hit you like that, but she was so freaking tough, you guys. Woo. That woman is a tough woman. And so she ended up having to do the dialysis at home. And she would not, you guys, stop working. She was like, I got to keep living. I got to work. And so that was just such a big, heavy thing to me. And so in all of that, I had just come into now, funny how God works. I was always the encourager. I was always, I wouldn't say the life of the party, but I can be down and be going through something worse than you, but what's going to lift me is me encouraging you. And I found that in those moments, that wasn't even working. And so I was like, you know what, this is big. And so during that time, as Joseph said earlier, I was always a barber. And kind of how God got me into the mental health deal is I said, I need to talk to somebody. And I found someone and I started talking. And I didn't know that I ended up way back when I was 10 and 11. And I was like, whoa, this stuff has been going on for a long time. So, but that was my aha moment of walking through the grief and stuff and talking it out. And I had discovered that when God works in mysterious ways, that's what he had done through barbering. I was always encouraging people, talking them through life. My wife would, before this happened, she would, I thought you got off work at 7 and it's 8:30. I'm like, I'm coming home. I've been standing out there an hour and a half talking to one of my clients, walking them through. And I developed such a passion and a love for mental health and just helping people. And as Marcella has said and Danny has said, just sitting with people and talking them through, just letting them get it out. I found that it was such a relief for me. So I was like, man, let me go do it. So, but that was the pivotal moment. Is it was like all the grief, all the things. It was like came to that one moment when my wife was diagnosed with the kidney failure, and so, but thanks to God, she got a kidney transplant. She was supposed to be on that the list for 5 years. She was on it 8 months, and
Oh,
I was just
Mm.
like, man, you too good to us. And it was almost like he was like, oh, you wanted your miracle? There it is, And so I was like grateful to God for that. But in that time, by that time, I was already a certified, life coach, working in the counseling place, healing place, and onward solutions and things of that nature. People was like, man, you need to be doing something. And now I'm just like, wow, this is what you were trying to get me to. And the first thing was the one of the guys, unbeknownst to me, while I'm walking through the counseling, he stops mid session on I think the fourth or fifth session and goes, "I'm sorry, this may be weird to you, but you're going to take over for me." When I looked at him like, "What?" He goes, "Dude, you're supposed to be doing this." And I'm like, "No, sir. No, you're a pastor. I'm not doing that." And unbeknownst to me, that's what I'm doing. And so if it wasn't for that moment, I don't know, if I would have ever truly walked into the passion and the purpose of what I love to do. And that's just really, truly walk through with people. But it was that moment of my wife going through this kidney transplant that really just brought it all. And I didn't even know, Danny, Marcella, I didn't even know that it could be all these ripple effects
mhm.
into that one. And I
Mhm.
was just like, man. And so um, when I saw the question and you asked the question, I was like, well, mine was a ripple effect that ended up in one that made me recognize it. So that was mine that I persevered through.
Wow, that's a wonderful story, man. And of course, I've had the pleasure of meeting your wife, and
Yeah.
you know, um, I'll say it like this: she don't look like what she been through. Let me put it
No,
like that.
everybody,
So
they
she does not
came.
look like what she been through. She out here writing
Yes.
books. She out here doing all kind of stuff. So you would have never, aside from you telling this story today, I wouldn't have
Yes.
known, and as I'm sure many around her don't know.
Hmm.
So again, I appreciate that transparency, and a couple of things to take away real quick from that. First, I don't know if you noticed the title of our show today is "When the Encourager Needs to Be Encouraged," and I think
Hmm.
sometimes when we're in that capacity, I think it's safe to say we're all for encouragers. God has to sort of break us down a little bit because when you're so used to being that one that comes alongside everybody else, it's almost like you kind of have an invincible nature about yourself, like you don't need anybody. So sometimes God has to remind, oh, you need people too, and sometimes it hurts the way He has to do it because He has to bring us to a real low dark space, a loss of life or a threat to the loss of life or something real close or someone real close to us to really stick it to us and say, okay, now I'm the one that's still running the show here, and while I do appreciate the work that you do, that I've equipped you, of course, to do, you need to be encouraged too. You need to be filled. You need to be uplifted, especially if you're going to live out your calling in serving others. If you're never
Hmm.
getting refilled because you think you got it all figured out and you okay, you know, hey, that let me remind you of that so that way you can properly execute at a high level. That's something I've even had to learn more and more about that Danny keeps me on my toes about. So
Yes, sir.
so hopefully putting it in his notes and I'm getting some good marks. I'm applying some things. So he tried to teach me. Make me
Yeah.
make me act right. But yeah, definitely, man. That's a powerful story and just a testament of just once again how great God is, and he's still a miracle worker, just like you thought he was. Even if
Yes,
it
sir.
looked bleak, he was still there all along. So thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. Switching it up to you, Danny. Same question. That that
Yeah.
that.
Seriously, I mean, your stories, I mean, are just so impactful in
Mm.
the sense of just there have been many of those instances where I just thought I wasn't going to get past it.
Mhm.
One of my things I do, I don't know why I want to talk about this more so, but I felt like most of my life I learned how to be an imposter.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, many of the spaces that I have gone into, being a professional singer, working and doing classical music, also being a therapist, working in the school system, I've been in a lot of white spaces, if I can just be candidly honest.
Mhm.
And so being in those spaces, it causes you to try to assimilate. And
Mhm.
I'll say even recently, until this last year, it took me moving to recognize how
Mm.
assimilated I had become.
Mhm.
I live in Arlington now, which is probably about 15 miles from where my office is, because I need me back. I needed
Mm.
me back. I needed me back. And I needed the cultural experiences that I just could not get there. I worked in a school system for about 12 years. Um, Worked in a high school, large high school, as a school counselor, and at that particular school for about 6 years. So every day you go in, you got to go with your game face on.
Mm.
And one of the things I realized once I decided to leave, how much pressure that had put on me to try to be this person, try to always be on. I'm sitting there in the store, Mr. Ross, I turn it on.
Mm.
And I said,
Mm.
it took me leaving to know that I was not being my authentic self and I was being that imposter. I used to say, now, God, why am I in these spaces that don't allow me to be who I am? Well, after I left. I have always been involved in diversity and equity types of things. But I got a call from a school district to talk to their entire community, their entire faculty and staff, and I trained them in diversity and equity situations. And little did I know those opportunities or things that I felt were like negative and they hurt me and made me feel some kind of way. Those were the platforms to get me to my destiny. So here I am, little black boy from Mississippi, talking to people about diversity and equity. And who better to talk to them about it, because I knew the system. I knew how, I know how you have this delicate balance of telling truth, but also getting the message out. And so I've done that work. It's been challenging. I've talked to many, many school districts about diversity and equity. And as I said, I had to do my own work in this area, because once I finished, I had my own challenges. Am I really giving them the right message? Is it too watered down? Is it too this or is it too that? Um, sought my own counseling for that particular reasoning. But I think when you don't know who you are, I'm gonna say that again. When you don't know who you are and you're trying to tell somebody else about themselves, you really can't teach anyone. I feel like I get to go to school every day in counseling because my clients teach me so much about me and so much of the parts that have been forgotten. And, the other end of that is recognizing, like, it's all about perspective. It's all about how you see things. I looked at my sister's death as one of the most hurtful and grieving spaces in my life. I never knew that I could feel how I felt. But the one thing I recognized too is, you know, she started talking to me in a different kind of way towards the end. I didn't even know it was the end. I knew she knew, or getting close, but she would just affirm me and just tell me to do certain things, and I'm like, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today had I not had that experience. And my sister, she's a minister, and she preached this sermon, and I'm like, the title just preaches by itself. She said it had to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
We are a much better family today. We're a closer family. We talk to each other. We care about each other. We get over the foolishness much quicker because, It had to happen, and we had to learn. Like, we're not going to be here all the time. We're not going to be here. Make the most of it. Get over the stuff that you need to get over so that you can help the people that you're supposed to help. I continually say, continue to learn about you because we have not arrived. We have, and I always share that with my clients. I'm like, I have not arrived. I consider it a privilege to
Yes.
walk with you on this journey because I could easily be on the other side of that couch tomorrow. You hear me? So I really, really take it as
Yeah.
such a gift when people share with me, when they open up to me, that I get to be invited into their lives, and God saw fit to see something in me to help them. So those experiences changed my perspective, but I'm also recognizing I wouldn't be who I am had those occurrences not happened. I have been doing like some major conferences, and I'm just like, grieve with diversity and equity, and I'm just like, how? How? If I look in my natural eyes, I was not qualified.
Right.
But I was open to what was happening in my life, and I saw a purpose in it. So I want to encourage people, find the purpose in the difficult situations because it's so much that can change a person's life by you just sharing your story.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, thank you for sharing that with us. The transparency in that, very powerful. And I can attest to what you just said. Just even in the short time that I've been doing, the podcast, every time that I'm getting guests on and they're telling me these stories, it's just like you said, I tell them all the time, and I'll tell you all the same thing. I'm being blessed and I'm learning more about myself as you're telling me stuff. It's not just about, oh, let me get all the gossip and the juice on them. No, it's like you were there's some healing that's going on, there's some opening up of some stuff,
Yes,
that's
yes.
helping to strengthen and build you up so that again, so you can properly pour, you can properly reciprocate in the calling that we're all walking in. So thank you for sharing that, man. um
Sure.
I'm interested in knowing from each of you, as we talk about this whole thing of challenging adversity moments and struggles and things like that. What's sort of your go-to routine when you're faced with, you know, moments of difficulty? Is there a certain, regimen or routine that you like to kind of go through that just helps you to stay locked in and focused without letting whatever that moment is become too overwhelming for you where you're just stuck, but instead you're able to actually navigate through, whether it's a big situation, little situation. This is what I usually do, to kind of walk my way through that kind of thing. So I'll start back with you, Marcella. Tell us, what's your routine? What's your process?
Yeah, so what keeps me rooted and grounded is making sure that my self care is number one. Um, as a mom, as a wife, family member, business owner, it's a balancing act, right? Trying to make sure that I am using my time wisely without putting myself last. And so a long time ago, I had to learn that in order for me to show up for my kids, my husband, and everybody else, I have to pour into myself. I have to show up for myself first. They always say you can't pour from an empty cup.
That's
And
right.
so I am very intentional daily with making sure that I start my day off in the word. I start my day off prayer, meditation in my word, spending time with God. He has brought me a long way, and I am so grateful for that. And so I start my day out with Him. I also use physical activity. As I said before, there was a time where I didn't have mobility in my legs, where
Right.
I wish I could have walked and I could not. And when you've been in a space like that, when you are able to walk, you do not take it for granted. And so morning, my working out is a testament to how grateful I am for God. So spending time doing physical activity, it also helps me to get into a good mood. Those endorphins that it produces, all of those things help to kind of set the tone for my day. So making sure that I start my day out with that. And then also, I'm very mindful about my nutrition, what I'm putting into my body. I'm big on fruits and vegetables and certain types of meats. And so all of that I think of, it's a holistic approach when it comes to your self-care. And then allowing space to rest. Just knowing when too much is too much, when to say
Mhm.
no, setting those healthy boundaries is very important. And so for me, I've learned over the years that by implementing this plan for myself, it helps me to stay, it helps me to be productive. It helps me to be happy and in a good mood. And so that's kind of what I do on a daily basis.
That's awesome. And I love that.
Awesome.
And I think what in particular stands out to me is the fact that your process is not one that you implement when you're in the face of adversity. Like you don't wait for the adversity to come first. You know, I don't wait till I get sick to start eating better. I don't wait till I'm exhausted till I start resting. I don't wait till I'm, lacking before I start pouring in. This is a lifestyle thing, so that when that moment hits, because we already know that it's going to come in many cases unexpected, unannounced, you're already in position to receive it and then be able to properly and in a healthy way process it.
Yes.
That's beautiful. That
Yes.
your approach to that. What about you, Spoon? What's kind of your thing that works for you to kind of deal with difficult and challenging times? How do you process through that kind of thing?
Well, for one thing, is kind of like what Marcella just said in the aspect of uh, I had an uncle cousin. You know how you had them older, being from a large family. You got somebody that's really your second cousin, but he old enough to be your uncle. And he would go away and he have his time, and he would always come back and say, "Spoon, don't ever forget. Self-preservation is the first law of nature." He would say those things to me, and I start learning that. I have to, if I'm not okay in a good headspace, good mind space, good spiritual space, natural space, then I won't be a good husband, a good father, a good counselor, good friend, good barber, all those things. So I try to stay, and then kind of bouncing a little bit back to what Danny said at the end of his last statement, and that was never feeling that I've arrived. Like, man, I'm always looking in the mirror, going, "Spoon, what else can you work on?" And so, with those things, it's not what it used to be, which was it used to be an insecurity of that. Man, I'm not this or I'm not that. I got to keep striving, as Danny spoke a little while ago about a musician. I grew up around church musicians, so he already can say what's up with that. So, and I
Yes.
was always the one that I would just find my little niche and I'm good. Um, but in that, you could always be, and so I learned that if you're around people that are growing, then that is a healthy place. That's healthy growth. So I always try to surround myself with people that I know are really in tune with who they are, because that won't let me fall back into that imposter syndrome, which I've worked so hard to make sure I come out of. So that's one of my routines that I do. As she said, I'm on my porch with my coffee or tea every morning, with my word, with my book. And then also, this is one thing that I'm grateful for my father. When he became a teacher in the Word of God, he went the practical route. And I was so grateful for that, because it opened my eyes to see God in everything. He's in everything, use every resource. And so I was actually going through something a couple of weeks ago. And just on my porch, I walked out like I do every morning, and I sat down, and it was a bird on my fence was just talking, and another bird came, and they just was, and in that I was able to find peace. I was just like, wow, that was something that, and so the other thing is being intentional about making sure you're in a good place. Even when, like he said, you're not arriving. So when I see things that I still need to work on about myself, I go, oh, wow, because I've worked through these other things, I can get through this too. But I don't want to take those things and allow them to become in my blind spots, because if I do and keep moving, then it overtakes me. Now, guess what gets to get a stronghold again? Insecurity, self talking, self doubt, all that stuff. But if I can see it in front of me and realize I too have not arrived, then it keeps me in that good headspace. Then the last thing, y'all, I love to laugh. Okay, listen,
Laughter is good.
I'm listen, I'm gonna get with someone that's gonna give me a good gut buster, and so getting around people that are just healthy and growing and being intentional has truly helped me in every area where I need to work on. Some of the areas I feel like I'm kind of may have a good strong on hold on it and I'm doing well, it doesn't let me get too relaxed in it. So just being intentional about where I am daily and getting into that space with God, just and allowing the life around me, that God is big enough to use any one of those things to show me where I need to continue to grow and be strong. So that's just one of my routines I try to keep going.
Love that. That's awesome. That's awesome. And same thing for you, Danny.
Sure.
What's your mode of operation to process through difficult,
Yeah.
challenging times?
I do think it's so important to just kind of recognize where you are. Um,
Mhm.
what worked 2 years ago doesn't work the same, right now. And so
Yeah.
I recently recognized that I was missing that a little bit of the chaos that I was used to from the school system. And
Mm.
what am I going to do? And so I was just online. I was looking at on Indeed, and there was this grief specialist position. And I said, oh, that's a hospital. I've never done that. So I went ahead and submitted for this position, and it was a full time position. And I'm just saying, like, well, let me just see what it's going to be about. How about in a matter of days, the lady called me, interviewed me, told me, she said, "Would you consider this as a part time position?" I was like, "Oh my god!"
Hmm.
And so it kind of gave me chills because I'm like, "Huh." Because I did not want to give up my practice. But
Right.
I knew I needed community. I knew I needed to
Yeah.
be around other people because, as you guys know, this can become very, very isolating.
Hmm.
You're hearing people's problems all day long, and you don't
Hmm.
go run and walk down the hall and say, "Ooh, that was hard."
Hmm.
That kind of thing. So, long story short, I got the job working part time. I'm in a hospital working with kids, and I'll be working as a grief specialist. And so I think one of the things is truly recognizing what season you're in and don't deny yourself that which you need in that particular season. Another
Mm.
thing that I have done too is all this stuff weighs on you. I've always dealt with the depression and the anxiety.
Mm.
Well, I've recently had to start back on my medication for depression
Hmm.
anxiety. And I share that with clients, I share it with patients because I want them to know I'm still human. I still do the stuff
Hmm.
I'm asking you to do, I need
Yeah.
you to do. So I get a bit, they're like, you don't, yeah, I got
Hmm.
my own stuff. Just because I'm in this seat doesn't mean I don't have my own stuff. And I
That's
learned
right.
also how to take a break.
Mm.
I will every quarter I try to take me like a week off just to get myself together. So I can come back to you in a better space. And there's this other thing that is a phrase I learned in DBT. It's called radical acceptance.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
I love radical acceptance because it's so simple. You can either work through the problem, solve the problem, and sometimes it's just what it is, and you got to accept that. And the other part of that is you can change your perspective. So those are the things you can do. Every problem is not much more than that when you really think about it. Those are the things I go to. I do meditate. I do practice self care and just trying to be better. Now, I'm not where Marcella is with, I'm trying to eat better and I'm trying to get back on my workout regimen.
Me
But
too, brother. Me too.
hey,
Me too.
but but you know what? I'm really trying to pay attention to me. I think that's so,
Yeah.
so, so important because, as I told
Yes.
you before, sometimes you live for other people, and before you know it, you've forgotten like what you need. So I'm really working towards that, chasing Danny and not chasing everybody else's stuff, and knowing like what Danny needs.
Yep.
That's wonderful. That's
That's
wonderful. Good
good,
stuff,
man.
man. Good
Mhm.
stuff. I mean, all three of you just. I mean, I'm
Great
taking nuggets
stuff.
from each one of you like I need to let me get a little bit of this. Let me get a little bit of Marcella, get a little bit of Spoon, get a little
Thanks,
bit of
kid.
Danny, and blend that in with what I got and make something happen. Because that's some powerful stuff. Thank you for
It
sharing that.
is.
Um, Marcella, if you had the opportunity to speak to the younger version of you or somebody who may be like you at that time, um, just in a few words, what would be some nuggets that you'd like to drop that you think would be important for the younger version of you to know that you wish that she would have known now that you know what you know up to this point in life, things that you would share with her?
Absolutely. And before I do that, I just want to say, Danny, I thank you so much for being transparent about the medication.
Yes.
It
Mhm.
is such a
Yes.
huge stigma attached to that, and a lot of
Yes.
clients have a really hard time with that. So I love that you embrace that with your clients and let them know and normalizing that conversation because it needs to happen more for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
I really appreciate that.
You.
So, what I would tell the younger version of me is um, first, I would tell myself a couple of things because the situation with my brother was like the straw that broke the camel back for me. Growing up with a single mom, um, not having a father figure, watching her work hard to raise six kids, it was hard. And then also, being the first generation college graduate, it was a lot of things. It was a lot of territory that I navigated that had never been navigated before, and I had to do it by myself. Is
Mhm.
how I felt, and so because I had to do it before, hadn't seen it done before, it was time when I was in spaces and I didn't really feel worthy of being in those spaces.
Mm,
I didn't really
Mhm.
appreciate what God was doing for me in the moment. It was like, okay, I'm here, but why? Right. And so I would tell myself, the younger version of me, that you are worthy of every
Mhm.
space God puts you in, and you're there for a reason. Right. You deserve a seat at whatever table He put you at, and then and that your story is powerful.
mm,
Um, and then another thing I would say is let God take the wheel.
Mm.
I was
Mm.
not brought up in a church,
Mm.
and learning to love God and let God be in control of my life was a game changer for me. I didn't get that breakthrough until I was an adult, and I thank God for that. But I can look back over times in my life where if I had done it, life would have been so much easier. So I would definitely tell myself that, God is real. You need to develop a relationship with God, be intimate with Him, and let Him be in control because you don't have to control everything.
right.
Exactly. Ooh, come on.
Woo.
That's awesome. That's
My
awesome.
Lord.
Definitely some great words of wisdom right there.
That's
Same
good.
thing for
Yes,
you,
it
Spoon.
is.
What you telling younger Spoon? One he knows everything. He got it all figured out. What you telling him, or somebody that was like him that might be listening today, as far as those drops, those nuggets of wisdom that you would have to share in dealing with the challenges and adversities of life.
First of all, man, I just want to tell you, like, I am honored to be here with Marcella and Danny, and you guys are phenomenal. Okay, you
Yes.
guys,
Especially with
just honestly, I'm just enjoying, and it's like I'm having another session.
that.
But so it's awesome. Um, the one thing I would tell myself is that I was always wondering where is it? When
Mhm.
am I going to run into it? And so, but at the same token, I was wondering would I ever get there? And so, what I would tell my younger self is keep on living. You're going to get there. Keep
Yes.
pushing. Keep moving forward. Do not stop. And I think I would love to tell my younger self every adversity, every triumph, make it a moment and not a monument. Because if I do make it a moment, I'll keep moving. But if I make it a monument, I may get stuck. And
Mhm.
so many
Mm,
times, because that monument, we get there and we stay there and we don't want to leave there. And it's just like, because sometimes it's too good and sometimes it's too bad. Um, I would tell myself a lot earlier is that it's okay. I never would have thought in a million years that I would have said what Danny said and what Marcella's been saying in terms of when they about the medicine because of what I was raised. That yes, God is all that, but He uses everything. And
Exactly.
some people need medicine. You know, I need to check that out. So I would tell my younger self, check all this stuff. Don't get stuck with a tunnel vision that God is right here. Matter of fact, kick the box open and let God be God, and you look into medicine. You go get counseling a lot sooner. And so, and then I would also tell myself, let your wife help you.
Mm.
Let your wife help you. She ain't always wrong. And because it speaks to that thing of what Marcella was saying about control.
Mhm.
Um, is that when you raised, in a area where they're trying so hard to protect us, it's like
Mhm.
my heart just goes out to Marcella and Danny in terms of, I've had my own grief, but I haven't lost, a sibling. And so my father was a protector. And so he wanted to keep us kind of sheltered, you know what I mean? And I'm grateful for that, but it comes with its own handicaps. And so I would just tell myself, man, don't keep working, keep pushing. Don't be afraid. Take chances. You know what I mean? In some areas. And most importantly, what I would tell my young self is you're going to get there. Just keep moving. Keep
Mhm.
moving.
That's it. That's
Absolutely.
it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And for you, Danny, what are you telling Danny from Mississippi in the trailer? What you telling him that
Yes,
he need to
yes,
know
yes,
about?
yes, yes. And I do think, your circumstance where you came from is not the end.
Hmm.
Yes.
Um, I'm so grateful for hard times. I thought that I couldn't make it through. Carl Rogers, one of my favorite therapists, he says, "Until I know myself, only then can change begin." And I challenge myself every day
Mm.
to continue to know myself, to continue to realize like being black is a gift.
Yes, sir.
If you
Yes.
Yes.
think about it, we know how to maneuver, we know how to come around this way, we know how to play the cards, but it also comes with some penalties too.
Hmm.
Check
Hmm.
yourself every day to make sure that you're being authentic to yourself
Mm.
and making sure that you're happy with
Yes.
the life that you're living. Nobody else's life, but your life. You get to choose what you make of it. You get to choose what you become. And even if you've been that, you have an opportunity to move into your greater self. Greater is
Yes.
he that is in me than he who is in the world. And I
Yeah.
do believe that if I continually walk, another one of my favorites is all things work together for the good of them who love the Lord, who are called according to his purpose.
Woo.
I ain't know many scriptures, and I was a preacher kid. But that is the one that stuck with me. Sometimes it's one
Yes.
scripture that's going to
Yes,
get
sir.
you through. Know that scripture, know that phrase, know that quote, so you can speak to yourself and you can encourage yourself, and just learning how to be humble, learning how to know
Yes.
when to say when. Sometimes you're the student and sometimes you're the teacher. Know those opportunities as to who you need to be and who you need to become in those particular moments. And bottom line for me is, Danny, you are enough. You
Mm.
are enough. You
Yeah.
that ends it all. You're enough. All of y'all. I,
Yeah.
I love y'all. Y'all are
All
enough.
right. All right. All
Yes.
right.
Love
Man,
y'all
we
too.
are
Yes, sir.
that's beautiful. That is beautiful. So
Yes.
before I let you all go, again, thank you for being with us on the show today. But before I let you go, I do want to take an opportunity to celebrate you, to acknowledge, to affirm, to love on you. So I'm gonna start with you, Marcella. Tell us, is there anything going on, anything exciting you got in the works that your projects, activities, whatever you want to share? We want to hear about it, and we want to love on you and celebrate that. So let us know what's up.
Yeah, so I've worked with kids forever. Although I work with adults and children and families and couples now, kids are my passion. And so I'm really big on teaching children emotional intelligence. And so
Mm,
this summer, I had the opportunity to partner with the local school district and one of the
Mm.
local community health centers, community centers, and bring a SEL program, a SEL camp to the kids. It's a 4-week camp. We're going into our 3rd week of camp now. SEL is social and emotional learning. I'm absolutely enjoying and loving the change that I'm making in the kids and also in the families, because there's a parental component to it. So I'm not only teaching our youth, but I'm also trying to instill some of those skills in parents as well. I feel like if we can start working with our youth at a younger age and helping them to develop expanding their emotion word vocabulary, learning how to connect with their emotions, learning how to communicate their emotions, it helps them when it comes to problem solving, conflict resolution. That goes into academic performance and just them being able to advocate for themselves in a healthy way. And so I'm excited to be doing this. I also am looking to contract with some local micro schools and home schools to bring this to them as well. So that's something exciting that's going on for my private practice, Mind Your Mind Counseling and Consulting. And I always celebrate just being healthy, celebrate being able to wake up every day in my right mind, being able to move every day. I have twin boys that's 5. I have
Wow.
a 9-year-old, and me and my husband, we've been married for 14 years. And so I celebrate that every day.
Yes.
So that's what's going on.
Awesome.
That is beautiful. Yeah,
Awesome.
you gotta stay fit and in shape to keep up
I
with the
do.
5-year-old boys.
I do literally, right?
Yes.
You
Yes.
got your hands full. All right, that
Yes,
is
sir.
wonderful, and we definitely celebrate that. Spoon.
Thank you.
Anything you got going on? Exciting news? Things you hadn't got in the works? Projects? Anything like that? What's going
Yes,
on with you?
sir. Well, my wife, as you mentioned a little earlier, my wife, during that time of her going through her kidney transplant and all that, she wrote a book. And when I tell you she wrote a book, she wrote it, she did it her own, she published, she did it all. And we are celebrating that. And she didn't just only write the book, but it's a cookbook. It's my kitchen to yours. But along with her recipes, she created her own spices for each recipe. And so she actually has her spices in a store and online, and she just, I mean, we're celebrating, just like scratching my head like, man,
Awesome.
I got some work to do. She doing all this and with someone else's kidney, and I got both mine, and I can't keep up with her. But we're so proud, and we're celebrating that. And I'm also just partnered with the company called Onward Solutions, and it has different components, and one of the components is counseling, life coaching, what have you, and consulting. And my daughter was celebrating her. She was going to school to be a sports medicine doctor, and the Lord kind of shifted her, and so she's opening up her own marketing and all that business, and it's done shot through the roof. And so, but my all that is exciting, but my most exciting thing that I'm embarking on, I just had a meeting this past week with a young man that asked me to come along, and one of my passions in my heart is for men. Um, that we can just really find a safe place to be us, to figure out, to let go of the imposterism, to just live again and find out that wherever you are, it's okay. And I want to help the resources, get them the resources to talk to people, connect with other people, other men, other whatever it is you need. I just have such a passion to help them get there. For even businessmen, if you're a home builder but you're stuck and you need capital, let's look and let's find that, and let's be a resource to connect in every aspect. So that's one of the newest projects that's about to be on my plate, and I'm super excited about that. And so my wife and I just celebrated 30 years of marriage, and we got 3 kids. They're all grown, and 2 grandkids. So I'm just trying to just keep it going, man. So I'm excited
That
about life, and I'm really excited about meeting Marcella and Danny. And Danny, I'm gonna find you. You too close
Likewise.
to me.
I'm too
You
close to
you
you.
too close in the DM. I'm gonna find you.
That's it. That's it.
So
That's awesome. So it sounds like you need to share that cookbook information with Marcella, since she's a
Yeah.
little ahead of the game on us on the
yes,
health journey, and then you need to
I
be linking up with
absolutely will.
Danny because, like you
Please.
said, y'all
Yes,
in the same, we in the same town here, so it's not like
yes,
y'all can't link up, and you have a passion for the same thing he does, is
Mhm.
connected with black men. So
absolutely.
there's a collaboration opportunity right there.
Definitely.
So
Yes,
Definitely.
all
yes,
right,
And
and
keep me in
absolutely.
that loop because I got a husband that can
Oh
benefit
no,
from that for sure.
we
there we
yes,
go.
ma'am. We're gonna
There
do
we
it.
go.
Yes.
There we go. And so for you, Danny, what you got on the plate? What's coming up?
Man, it is so much. I have a book called "The Messages We Carry" as a workbook for Black men. Since you guys were talking about that, but that's not my
Yes.
most recent book. But I'm
Okay.
always excited about that book because that book was birthed from like probably about the 8 sessions that I hear most from men is about
Mm,
communication, relationships, how we have these
mm,
secret codes, the brohood nod, how we look at
mm.
and how we size each other up
Wow.
and still working towards that place of just kind of being the authentic person and dealing
Hmm.
with the injustices that sometimes
Hmm.
come against us and knowing how to navigate that because
Hmm.
when we don't talk about it, we may become something that we're not proud of. And so
Mm.
it's so important that we give black men a safe place to just be. You ain't got
Yes.
to do nothing but just show up, be, and know you're in a safe place. So I have a group called the Brotherhood. We're on
Okay.
hiatus for a little bit because I'm taking care of my self care right now because I know that's important. But we'll be
Hmm.
starting again in the fall pretty heavily. But we do a lot of we connect online and we connect in the community. I will
Okay.
be doing some diversity education for new teachers over in Fort Worth, and so I'm going to be helping them work through some of or presenting to them about diversity and equity. I just finished my sixth, seventh book. I can't even remember, but it's
Wow.
called Messages on Connection and Belonging. And sometimes we get so hung on, black and white. It's so much
Hmm.
more to diversity and equity. We need to be diverse in our church. We need to have
Yes, sir.
in our churches. I had a member at a large church I used to go to, and she said, "You know what? I just don't feel like I could. I get to connect with people, and it set something in
Mm.
my spirit in the sense of just saying, hey, everybody is somebody, and we need to be intentional about connections. It's about connection in the workplace, connection with yourself, connection within your family." Is so many ways that we do an injustice to ourselves when we don't connect and we don't
Yeah.
connect with others. And so I always thought I was an introvert. I think I'm an omnivert. I need my I love people and I love helping, but I know when to
Yeah.
say when. And like I said, I'm also doing I'm doing a grief workshop in the fall. And what we want to do, and I'm going to do some trainings for educators on grief and loss, and I'm going to do some trainings just for teachers and individuals and therapists who
Hmm.
want to have some strategies to help with.
Hmm.
Plan on doing some online and some in-person types of things. So I'm really excited. Go to my website
Okay.
www.dlrcounselinggroup.com, and I also have another one, www.themessages.net. That's
Okay.
my advocacy work. That's the things that I'm interested in. My book, everything related to messages that we carry and we hold on to. So, trying to change those messages. Thank you guys so much for allowing me to be with you guys.
Awesome.
Absolutely. That's
Awesome.
beautiful. All three of you got some beautiful work going on. Of course, I have
Mhm.
my book is out, Blessings in the Streets,
Yes,
when God
Yes.
leverages our valley
Congratulations.
experiences.
Yes,
So
sir.
if you're
yes.
anybody that's yeah, listening that is interested in getting that, you can go to blessingsinthestreets.com to not only get the book, but to find out more about my products and services offerings that I have as well. And of course, if you have enjoyed what you have been having a chance to participate in today with our three wonderful guests, please, of course, subscribe, like, comment, share the podcast. We're trying to do some awesome work, trying to reach people in the most difficult of spaces and offer some encouragement and empowerment and uplifting. And I think we did a good job of that today. And there's more of that to come. So thank you, my three guests, Marcella, Spoon, Danny, for being with me today and taking time out of your schedule. And for my listeners for the podcast today, just remember here at the Blessings in the Street podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and where your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and I thank you so much for being with us. God bless. Tune in, stay tuned in for more coming from the podcast, and take care, and I'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.